Hard to believe. They look like CGI, but they're real. So, thank you all for coming out. And I guess in the panel it said something like Devil May Cry, right?
Yeah.
So I guess that's what I have to talk about up here. And I would love to show you some stuff, but basically, let me just give you a little, let me turn this down a little bit. Oh, we don't want to do that. Oh, it's like all or nothing, huh? Oh, there we go, okay. Thank you. So, how many of you guys have played Devil May Cry? Everybody knows, right? How many of you guys have played Devil May Cry 5? Same amount. All right. How many of you guys have played Devil May Cry 3? That's where I started in all this. So I actually, like you, was a fan of the series, a fan of, the series. Up to that time, they had only released 1 and 2. But yes, I was a fan. And when I got the opportunity or the phone call to go and audition for the role, or I should say to help with the auditions for the role, I was stoked. So, a little history in all this. I started back in motion capture in 1997. Probably next to TJ Storm, who is also here at this convention. We are probably the longest motion capture, the longest performing, still in the business, motion capture performers still in the business today, with the most experience. I don't know anybody else other than TJ who has more experience in motion capture than I do. Maybe Richard Dorton, who is also, I think, is he here? Anybody know? Okay. Yes? Okay, so Richard, TJ, and myself probably all started motion capture about the same time. Maybe TJ a little bit earlier because he did motion capture for the original horrible US Godzilla movie. That one. And around that time, it was like in 1996 was I think when that movie was made, and he was doing his thing 5 or 6. I got the opportunity to do motion capture for Resident Evil Code Veronica. That was the role of Chris Redfield. So I've been portraying that role of Chris ever since. So that's the longest character run I've had, portraying Chris, doing the motion capture for that character in Resident Evil 6, 5, the Vendetta movie that came out 2 years ago. So I've been sort of doing this motion capture thing for a while. It's sort of become a thing. And at that time, I was working with Japanese actors. I was doing this in Japan, and I was like, oh cool, look at this technology. I get to put it on my body. And at the time, there were still wires connected to it all, so it wasn't like the shiny dots that we see now. There were actually wires connected to accelerometers, which are actually like in the iPhone. And they were tracking our movements in that way, really like old versions of it. So our iPhone now has probably way better tech than what was back then. And I was acting with other Japanese performers, but they wanted me to speak English. I was like, okay, how are the other actors gonna know what I'm saying? Well, just teach them the last word of your line. It's like, okay. And then I would have to teach the other actors, okay, when I say, where's Jill? Or, where's Jill Wesker? What are you doing here? When you hear here, then that's your cue for your next line. And we did that, and it was just really, they really kind of knew what I was saying because they had the Japanese version, but it just felt very orchestrated and not very organic, very unnatural. How many guys have heard of the manga and then later released live action movie Gunhead? A couple people, all right. This is the true otaku if you know this movie. And it also shows your age too. In the 90s, this movie called Gunhead came out, and I was still living in the States. This was before I moved to Japan, and I watched it, and it's horrible. It's a horrible, horrible movie. But it's based on a manga that has like robots, and it has these fighting soldiers and stuff, and they're fighting something I even forget what they're fighting. But there's American actors speaking English, and there's Japanese actors, it's a Japanese produced film, speaking Japanese, and they talk to each other as if they know what each other's saying. like, and it's in subtitles. So it's like the Japanese person says their lines in Japanese, and then the woman says something, like she responds to her. But it's very clear, like, they don't know what they're talking about. So I call what we did in Resident Evil the gunhead effect. We had this gunhead effect going on. And I wanted to make it better. I wanted to, like, there's got to be a better way to do this. Time went on, and in 2001-ish, I formed the company Just Cause Productions with my partner Takuya Shibata out in Japan. We formed a production company to make movies, essentially. Like, games wasn't really on the list, but we started going around to sell ourselves as a company to different other companies to make movies, and nobody wanted to take us seriously. They're like, well, what have you done? You guys have never produced a movie, so how can we give you the responsibility to produce a movie? And we're like, true, you know, it's like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? I mean, this is a lot of this entertainment industry, that's how things happen. So we went to the drawing board and we were like, well, how do we get experience? Let's start small projects. And then I said, well, I was on this game called Resident Evil, and they've got this thing called the gunhead effect, and we can fix that. We can, like, audition people from the States for these games, because ultimately a lot of these games only get released in English. So like Capcom games, or I think it's like well, Metal Gear, these kinds of games. They have a Japanese version, but like the main market is more of American or English based market. So we pitched to Capcom and some of the other companies that we Just Cause can handle the casting, and we can sponsor the visas for actors. We'll bring them to Japan, and then we'll, you know, do the motion capture with them speaking only the English lines. And that sort of is how the Devil May Project fell on our lap. Was we did a project, we did the first thing with Capcom was Resident Evil Outbreak. Have you guys? Yeah. Good. So Outbreak 1 and Outbreak 2, me and my company, we cast the actors out of Japan. Out of America first. Flew them to Japan, and then they performed the motion capture. They still went with different voiceover actors. I think at that time they had contacted with a company out of Canada. But at least the movements were more in sync to what the final dialogue was going to be. That was the goal, because we kind of had this bad kung fu movie type effect going on, right? The gunhead effect, where the body movements don't quite match what's happening with the mouth. How many of you guys have seen old, dubbed into English kung fu movies, right? Yeah. They're classic and cheesy in a lot of ways, but a lot of that is because of the differences in the language and the body movement. It looks like my computer's